A lot to talk about and cover here weather-wise, and I guess we should start by saying that we have observed pretty much every extreme there is, except for dryness and moisture stress, and in the last week, well, in 2 weeks in some places, we have also now added that to our list. Looking at the last week here, depending on where you were, northern parts of the state saw significant rainfall, in some cases more than 2 inches, especially across the western UP, which interestingly was probably the driest part of the state up until the last week, and actually the rainfall was definitely needed there. Contrast that though with sections of central lower Michigan, especially the west central part of the state, where essentially no precipitation fell over the last week. You combine that with above normal temperatures, and on the upper right here, you can see that over most of the state during the last week, average temperatures somewhere between 1 and 4 degrees above normal. Fairly close to normal up in the northeastern lower. That was probably the coolest part of the state relative to the climatology. But much of the upper Midwest, again, like Michigan, was warmer than normal. And the warmer than normal temperatures here over the last 2 to 3 weeks certainly have made a difference in terms of degree day totals, which is obviously something everyone is watching given the late start of the growing season. In the lower left here, I have an image that looks at seasonal growing degree day accumulations here relative to the normals. And what we can see is that, yes, Michigan and much of, again, almost all the upper Midwest is still lagging behind normal, especially the northern parts of the state, but it is closer than it has been certainly over the last several weeks. You can see here as close as parts of north central Ohio, southern Indiana. We actually now, the degree day totals beginning May 1 are actually even a little bit ahead of normal where they are for this time of the year. So there have been some changes. I would also make one other comment regarding the degree days and of course the concern about growth, development, and phenology this year. And unfortunately, in the areas that we have begun to see some water stress here, especially over the last 1 to 2 weeks, and those are places, like we talked about, that typically more coarse textured soils that hold a little bit less water, but especially areas where the crops have been planted late into wet soils and the rooting structure just is insufficient to meet the demands of the crop above ground. And we're seeing that not just in Michigan, but all across the Midwest. The plants are attempting to get roots down, and there certainly is subsoil moisture available if the roots can get there, but we saw an example where the atmospheric demand just exceeded what the roots could supply. But that said, and moving back to our question or our issue of development, unfortunately, when we do see those crops stressed, the degree day units are not as valuable to us as they would be if the crop were not stressed. So the crop goes into a defensive mode and slows down a little bit. So that's not a good thing. But the warmer than normal temperatures at least have accelerated crop growth. It certainly is favored here, I think, just pre-wheat harvest and got things in most areas dried down for a harvest to begin in earnest. So at least a big difference from what we had for most of the spring. Well, the big story here, at least in the near term, and as everybody probably appreciates, is a big heat wave right now across the Midwest, but it will be spreading eastward during the weekend. Maximum temperatures here today on the Thursday the 18th forecast to reach the 90s and that's on the left side here, left panel here, over large portions of the Midwest, probably approaching 100 down in areas of the central and southern Great Plains. Just as important, though, to these air temperatures, on the right-hand side here, we have dew point temperatures, which are unusually, abnormally high. These are forecast dew point temperatures here for this afternoon. And for much of Michigan, you can see the dew point temperatures, which is the temperature, the air temperature at which you would begin to see condensation form if you could cool the air. But they range in Michigan here this afternoon from the mid and upper 60s in the far northern part of the state to almost the mid 70s across the south. And if you follow this and you know, well, it's another measure of humidity or water vapor in the atmosphere. And if you follow this climatologically, in Michigan, really anytime we get a dew point temperature above 60, it starts to become fairly muggy. When we get to 70, it gets to be extreme, and and really 80 degrees Fahrenheit is probably a climatological limit. We rarely ever see dew point temperatures here in Michigan reach that, but we are close in portions of the Midwest. So the air mass that we're dealing with right now, and is actually just moving into the state as we speak, is a very unusual one. On the lower panel here, this is the National Weather Service's watch and warning map, and you can see excessive heat warnings across large portions of the Midwest, heat advisories and that includes the southern third of the lower peninsula here, and heat advisories northward from that into the central lower. The red colors here out in the mid-Atlantic are watches here for the weekend, as this air mass will shift finally to the east. And that's the other big news here, I think, in terms of our forecast, because while we are looking at a classic heat wave pattern right now, and for the next couple of days, there are big changes coming, and they'll begin in earnest here by the end of the weekend and early next week. On the left side panel here, I have the upper air pattern, the jet stream pattern across North America, and you can see there's troughing out in the west part of North America, ridging in the east, and this is again a classic upper air signature for for heat underneath that ridge, and that's definitely what we have. We should borrow the term from the media, the heat dome. We hear that all the time. That's basically what is leading to this. Underneath this ridge, we've got sinking or subsidence of air, hot, humid air, subtropical moisture involved with it. It's just a combination for heat wave conditions. But as we look here on the right, these are forecast jet stream conditions out a week. This is for Saturday morning of a week from this Saturday, and you can see a huge change is forecast to take place across North America. And we almost basically flip-flop. We go to a big ridge. The ridge moves out or builds out over the western part of the continent, and over the Midwest and the east, we replace the ridge with a big trough. So we go from southwesterly and southerly flow here currently and over the next couple of days to northwesterly flow by next week and continuing. There is, I should note here, there's very high confidence and consistency amongst the forecast guidance. So again, the confidence in this change is actually for this time of the year very high. Down below here, just as an illustration, underneath these upper air features, these are forecast air temperature anomalies on the surface, and you can see for the next here, this is a 5-day average, but much above normal temperatures are forecast for the Midwest and the East, at least for the near term through the end of the weekend. But then by late next week, you can see that is completely replaced. In big contrast, we go to below normal temperatures. So we're going to see a huge flip-flop take place in our weather patterns. This definitely in terms of temperature here, beginning again in earnest by the early part of next week. In our near-term future here, this is a surface map. Right now, we have a warm front making its way northeastward across the state, and this is really the leading edge of this really hot, humid air to our west and south. It's going to be with, at least for southern and central parts of the state, it'll be with us for the next 2 to 3 days. Northern parts of the state will just get a glancing blow of it. Won't be quite as hot there, but we're going to see this storm track along the U.S.-Canadian border gradually sink a little bit to the south each day. And finally, by Monday and Tuesday of next week, we will get some Canadian origin air mass or Canadian origin air into the region that will make a big difference in terms of our temperature. In terms of precipitation, there will be, with this pattern, almost a daily chance for scattered showers and thunderstorms, especially today, and I think also on Saturday, probably the best 2 chances here for a 24-hour period. The lower left here, looking at the latest radar, there's a large area of showers and thunderstorms that formed overnight in Minnesota, Wisconsin. That is moving towards Michigan, but it's also weakening. And I think there will be some of those probably that survive across Lake Michigan and make it to western parts of the state. But again, they will weaken by the time they reach here. If it does hold together, it will probably be scattered rainfall at best. But look for some redevelopment here later this afternoon and tonight, especially as temperatures and instability increase during the course of the day, and then another round of showers and thunderstorms here this evening. It's possible that some of those, given the extreme conditions on the surface, could reach severe limits. The primary threat there would be strong winds. It doesn't look like maybe some heavy rain, but Again, scattered is an important word here. Some areas will be missed and not receive any precipitation. Others may see heavy rainfall. By tomorrow morning, you can see the warm front has moved out to our north and east over Lake Huron. We have a weak cool front then moving into the state from the north and west with another chance for showers and thunderstorms. But over especially central and southern parts of the state, this will probably be the hottest day of this heat wave, it looks like a 3-day type of event tomorrow, with temperatures in the south reaching the mid-90s. We combine that with dew point temperatures in the low and mid-70s. We'll see heat index values tomorrow and probably Saturday up near 100, if not up even closer to 105. So it'll be very, very uncomfortable and climatologically pretty close to an extreme. By Saturday morning, pretty much more of the same. This frontal boundary stalls out over Michigan with another chance for showers and thunderstorms. I think, again, probability-wise, later today, tonight, and then on Saturday probably will be the best chances for rainfall in most parts of the state. There will be a chance also tomorrow, primarily in northern parts of the state, but it will be less than, again, than today or Saturday. And then looking at the forecast precipitation totals here for the whole week, we see actually some significant, definitely more than we saw last week in the forecast. Most areas expected to see between 1/2 and 1 inch of water equivalent here between now and next Thursday. I should say that most of the precipitation forecast here in this time frame will be over the next 3 days, probably relatively dry. By the time we get certainly towards Monday, in northern parts of the state, it'll probably be dry on Sunday as well, and then probably into the middle of next week. So again, most of this precipitation, in some cases more than 1.5 inches, is expected to fall over the next 1 to 3 days. Then looking on to the medium range, we've already talked about this big jet stream change, and that's what the image here has on the left. You can see a very, very amplified jet stream pattern across North America, big ridge in the west, big trough in the east. This is something we would more typically see in the fall, but that's a very, very easy forecast for the meteorologist, and you can see the temperature pattern here in the upper right clearly reflects that, with warmer than normal conditions expected out in the western U.S. and cooler than normal over the east. So a big, big change will occur here, transition beginning early next week. It also, and right here, the lower right here, for precipitation totals, at least in the 6 to 10 day time frame through the 23rd through the 27th, you can see a significant probabilities towards below normal. I think as we move into the 8 to 14 day time frame is very, very similar to this, but probably a little bit less dry than this outlook. So it is getting cooler, but it also here on this this southeastward side branch of this ridge, it probably will be dry. There'll be fewer than normal chances of precipitation. The other thing is that with northwesterly flow, we won't have the Gulf of Mexico open for us. So both of those things collectively point at least towards normal to below normal precipitation totals. And I think right now that this pattern very likely will continue for most, if not all, of the remainder of July, especially as, again, we move into the early part of next week. High temperatures by the early part of next week and for much of the week will be back into the 70s, low 70s, maybe even some upper 60s in the far north, and low and mid 70s generally across the south, and nighttime temperatures back down to the 50s. So we'll be back down a few degrees below normal, similar to where we were here earlier back in June before the warm weather developed late in the month. And so that's where we're headed. We will have some new long lead outlook guidance here to share with you next week. There may be some changes in this given what we see here. It's interesting that this upper air pattern that you're seeing here right now was actually forecast a few weeks ago for our July outlook. It just never materialized here until very, very late in the month. But right now there is a lot of confidence. Almost all of the forecast guidance is suggesting or calling for this pattern. So it's a big, big change next week and probably into the early part of August. And so summarizing, heat wave in the short term, but big changes by early next week. Some of the state, at least some of those areas that have been too dry here recently, warm and dry, should see some relief here over the next couple of days with showers and thunderstorms. And then again, we will see our temperatures really noticeably drop off by the next week and probably continue that way for the next couple of weeks. And that's all I have. Does anyone have any questions this morning?
Any questions for Jeff, or any questions about any other field current conditions going on? We have quite a few specialists on right now that could help answer a variety of questions.
There is a question there about WBC trapping supplies. I assume that means pheromone. Most of the pheromones, if you read their literature, they talk about keeping them in the refrigerator and that they can stay out for like, 8 weeks. And I usually change pheromones every 4 weeks, and I will keep them for a year in the refrigerator. So I'm still using some WBC pheromone from last year, and to use them up, sometimes I just double the pheromone in the trap. So that's what I do.
Thank you, Chris.
Just a comment for Chris. This is Paul. We did, one of the agribusiness have been finding some low populations of corn borer in and around the county.
Yeah, it is out there, and it is in, I've seen it in BT corn where it's found the non-BT plant. So you'll find a riddled plant, and then everything's clean around it, and it just shows you kind of what that population out there has become, I think. And I'm trying to take pictures to, have more educational materials, but, it is out there.
Well, hearing no more questions, and since we're past our time, I want to thank everyone for getting on and attending today. We hope to see you at the Ag Innovation Field Day, which is next Friday, and also on our call next Thursday. Thank you again.